Hello and welcome to Before You Pull, where we will show off the kits and details of upcoming characters, as well as some recommended teams and disc setups to help you plan your pulls. All of the following is from the creator server, so things are still subject to change. This time though, we're going over Trigger, the sniper of Obol Squad, an S-rank electric stunner that makes use of a lot of aftershock attacks. I will say, as always though, I'm not your father and I can't tell you whether you should pull or not, but hopefully by the end of this video you can come to your own conclusion. Firstly, as a quick TLDR of Trigger, she's a very easy to use stunner that can work in many different scenarios thanks to her providing a near permanent stun damage multiplier and being able to constantly build up the stun meter thanks to her off-field aftershock attacks. Let's go over her kit though to show you what exactly I mean. Firstly, Trigger has a gauge called Purge, which can go up to 100 points. This gauge is marked by the blue bar below her health. In order to do any aftershock attacks, you need to have this Purge gauge. You can build up Purge by holding down the basic attack button, which causes Trigger to enter her sniper mode. Here, each attack she does generates 25 points of Purge. During this attack, she will also automatically dodge an incoming attack once every 8 seconds. After you release the basic attack, Trigger will do one last finishing shot that also triggers, get it, a quick assist to the previous agent in your lineup. This quick assist from the held basic attack can only occur once every 25 seconds. But now that you have a full gauge of Purge and Trigger is off field, you have two ways to trigger aftershock attacks. First is the weaker Harmonizing Shot, which occurs whenever a squad member attacks an enemy with a basic attack, a dodge counter, a special attack, a dash attack, or a quick assist. So any of the quote-unquote weaker attacks that you can do. But Trigger will then follow up with an aftershock attack and consume only 3 points of Purge, so very little all in all. However, this weaker version of Harmonizing Shot can only be triggered once every 3 seconds. But there is a stronger version called Harmonizing Shot Tartarus, and this occurs whenever a teammate uses an EX special, an assist follow-up attack, so like a parry, or when they use an ultimate attack. This aftershock attack now deals significantly more damage and daze, and it also consumes 5 points of Purge instead of the regular 3. Now, the same type of attack can only trigger this heavy aftershock twice within 20 seconds. But you can trigger both the regular and the strong aftershock attacks back to back at the same time. And you'll know when you're doing this because you'll just see Trigger dashing and flashing across your screen like a million times a second. But onto her EX special skill though. With enough energy, Trigger will lunge forward at the enemy, and by the way, this lunge has quite a bit of distance to it. But anyway, it does a burst of damage and daze, but more importantly, it triggers a quick assist again to the previous agent in the squad, and it causes Trigger to enter the coordinated support state for 8 seconds. This state is indicated by the Purge bar having a golden outline to it. While in this coordinated support state, when any attack from squad mates hit an enemy, it will trigger a regular version of her aftershock attack without consuming any Purge, and also without any cooldown restrictions. However, these free aftershocks can only occur up to 4 times. But because these free aftershocks are the regular version, like I said, since they are triggered by any attack, if you were to use something like an EX special, then not only would you get the regular free aftershock attack, but you would also get the stronger Tartarus version of the aftershock at the same time. Now, this coordinated state can be refreshed, allowing for a maximum of 20 seconds and providing a total of 10 free aftershock triggers instead of 4. But how do you extend this without using up a second EX special? Well, that's where the ultimate comes in. Of course, Trigger's ultimate does a lot of damage and daze, but this also causes Trigger to enter the coordinated support state for 12 seconds or extend it by another 12 seconds. And it also allows for another 6 triggers of the free aftershock attack. So when you combine one ultimate and one EX special, you get the maximum potential out of this coordinated support state. At the end of the day though, Trigger is a stunner. And obviously, a lot of her attacks can help inflict a stun, and her constant barrage of aftershock attacks can also help contribute to that. But what's more is that her core passive and team skill also help out boosting the damage of the team. Firstly, let's go over her core passive. At max rank F, whenever Trigger's aftershock attack hits an enemy, their stun damage multiplier increases by 35% for 5 seconds. And with how often Trigger will be doing these aftershock attacks, this is why I said it is a near permanent effect. But what's more is that this 35% increase applies to the enemy not just when they are stunned, but even when they aren't. So enemies are just going to be taking an extra 35% damage no matter what. And then for her team passive, if another member is an attacker or an electric unit, for every 1% of crit rate above 40%, the days dealt by Trigger's aftershocks will increase by 1.5% up to a maximum of 75%. So basically, if you want to get the most out of this, you will want 90% crit rate on Trigger. This is at least a nice way to help further increase impact, since realistically, for most agents, the only way to increase their impact is from the engine main stat or just the slot 6 main stat, which is fixed, or their kits. So although this team passive doesn't increase Trigger's impact directly, it's a new way that it can help increase the stunner's speed in which she stuns the enemy anyway. So the overall gameplay loop for Trigger is fairly simple. At the start of the battle, you just need to do a few charged attacks to build up her purge bar, and then you use an EX special when you can, and switch to another agent and let Trigger do her thing, unleashing a constant barrage of aftershock attacks against the enemy, all the while applying a nice 35% damage multiplier, and then eventually stunning the enemy too for an even bigger burst window. But next up, let's go over some team compositions. As implied by the team passive, Trigger naturally wants an attacker in the team, or more specifically, someone with high on-field presence, since Trigger herself is more than happy to be off-field. Obviously, the first person you would think of is Soldier Anby. Soldier Anby is also an electric unit, she likes to be on field a lot, and she also buffs the damage of Trigger's aftershock attacks. But of course, it's not like you need Soldier Anby to make Trigger work. Although the aftershock buffs are nice, those should just be considered as a small bonus. Yes, if you don't use Soldier Anby, then Trigger's aftershocks won't be doing as much damage, but we're not really interested in the damage from the aftershocks in the first place. They're there to apply the damage multiplier and to build up days for a stun. So Trigger can also work with other on-field agents, such as Evelyn, Ellen, or say Soldier 11. And then in the third slot, you can have your choice of a supporter, such as Astra, Lucy, or even Caesar too. If you really want to go all in on aftershocks, you can use Anby as well as Pulchra, although the fact that both Trigger and Pulchra have quick assists that go backward will probably take a bit of getting used to though. Another alternative team is if you have a more burst-oriented attacker, like say for example Xuyen. You can still pair them with Trigger on a team, but then you might want your third slot to be an on-field stunner instead, for example Qingyi, because now you'll have the benefit of both stunners. And yes, the damage multipliers from say Qingyi and Trigger do stack on top of each other. So not only do you get the damage multiplier benefit, but then you also get the benefit of having both the stunners building up the days together at the same time. As for Trigger's signature engine, the Spectral Gaze, once again we have an engine with a unique main stat, since this one provides 24% crit rate at max level for a stunner engine. But for the effect, when the equipper deals electric aftershock damage, the target's defense is reduced by 25% for 5 seconds, which again is going to be pretty much a permanent effect with how often that is going to happen. But what's more is that if this effect triggers when the equipper is not the active agent, which is going to be all the time because that's the whole point of aftershocks, the character that it is equipped to will gain 1 stack of Spirit Lock up to a maximum of 3 stacks. For each stack, this will increase the equipper's impact by 4%. However, once you have all 3 stacks, you will also get an additional 8% increase to the impact. So in other words, a 20% impact increase after 3 aftershock attacks. But as always, there are alternatives to this engine. It's by no means necessary to make Trigger functional. If you happen to have Lycan Signature, the Restrained, that can be used instead. Or even failing that, you can use the A-Rank Fossilized Core engine. Yes, I know that not having the free crit rate might mean that you can't hit that 90% threshold, but remember, what is the point of all that crit rate? It's to help deal more days with the aftershocks. You know what else can help with that? Having more impact, which these alternative engines do provide too. Obviously, the ideal though would be if you can get 90% crit rate even without Trigger's engine, but that means that you'll have to get pretty lucky with your disc substats. Speaking of discs though, let's go over those. For the 4-piece set, you can use Shadow Harmony since, don't forget, the 4-piece set can give a 12% crit rate boost once you're in combat, helping you reach that 90% threshold. And then for the 2-piece set, a Shockstar Disco can help you get some extra impact there. As for the main stats, slot 4 is obviously going to be crit rate, while slot 6 will be impact. And slot 5 can be your choice of either electric damage or attack percent, depending on whatever has better substats for you. And then lastly, for those of you who are going to be looking into multiple copies of Trigger, let's go over her Mindscapes. Mindscape 1 causes the bonus damage multiplier to be increased by 20%, and it also lowers the cooldown on the regular aftershock attacks from 3 seconds down to 2 seconds. And also, the purge gain from using her held basic attack increases by 25%, and the maximum purge goes up to 125 from 100. The increased purge is nice since the lower cooldown means you'll likely be burning through purge at a faster rate now. Mindscape 2 allows Trigger to gain a stack of Hunter's Gaze after using an aftershock attack, or she gains 2 stacks after using the final shot of her held basic attack. For each stack of Hunter's Gaze, this increases the entire team's crit damage by 6%, stacking up to 4 times. Mindscape 4 states that whenever Trigger enters or extends the coordinated support state, so basically after an EX special or an ultimate, the next aftershock attack will also trigger an additional disconnect attack that deals 200% of Trigger's attack as damage and 120% of her impact as daze. And lastly, for Mindscape 6, Trigger starts combat with 5 armor break rounds, the maximum amount, but she can also gain 1 for every 25 purge consumed. Trigger can use these armor break rounds when attacking in her held basic sniper stance, where each attack will consume an armor break round to do a hefty chunk of damage. But as for my final thoughts on Trigger, she's definitely a very flashy character. With all of those aftershock attacks, I feel like this is a much nicer implementation of an off-field agent, since even though she's going to be off-field, she's still actually contributing and you can see her attacking, as opposed to, you know, having Astra just off in the distance singing or Bernice's flames being the only thing that you see present. But the concept of an off-field stunner is nice though, since now you can kind of get the best of both worlds in terms of being able to use a quote-unquote greedy on-field attacker while still managing to get a stun in every now and then. Or honestly, like I said, you could even double down on the stunning too if that's what you want. I don't think Trigger is going to be the absolute best if you're trying to min-max a very specific team. Say for example, in a fire or an ice team, Lighter is probably going to be a much better stunner for that team, just because of how much she provides to specifically fire and ice teams. But the flexibility that Trigger provides, since she can sort of do her own work in the background, and the fact that she also applies basically a permanent 35% damage multiplier is, I think, going to be what makes her very appealing. So although she may not be the #1 pick for some teams, she will definitely be a solid pick for all teams. Otherwise though, thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, liking, commenting and subscribing is greatly appreciated. And it'll also help keep you notified for any future guides and videos that I upload. If you are planning on pulling for Trigger, I wish you the best of luck in your pulls. And so, until next time, bye bye!